Hi, my name is Law Eng Na and I'll be talking about ChatGPT. It's 8 o'clock at night. You're a year 5 teacher in curve and tomorrow you need to teach fractions. You still have not finished planning a lesson. Out of curiosity, you type one sentence into ChatGPT and within 30 seconds it generates a complete lesson plan, 3 differentiated learning activities, and an exit quiz. It almost feels too good to be true. So, should teachers rely on ChatGPT to design lesson plans? If AI can complete one of a teacher's core professional responsibilities in seconds, what does that mean for teaching? So today we are investigating one key question. Should WA primary teachers use ChatGPT to design lesson plans? So this investigation explores where it can genuinely strengthen teaching and where caution is needed. I have chosen lesson planning because it is one of the first and most practical ways teachers are beginning to use AI. While ChatGPT can quickly generate lesson ideas, planning effective lessons involves far more than producing resources. It requires teachers to understand the curriculum, know their students, and make informed professional decisions that AI cannot make on its own. So for teachers in WA, the use of ChatGPT also guided by professional expectations. It should align with the Australian curriculum, the Australian framework for generative AI in schools, and also the AITS Professional Standard 4.5, all of which emphasize the safe, ethical, and responsible use of digital technologies. AI can support teachers, but it should never replace their professional judgment. So, whether teachers can use it in ways that strengthen learning while protecting educational values, professional judgment, and students' well-being, that's the question. So let's begin. Can ChatGPT improve lesson planning without reducing meaningful learning? Baidu, Garson, and Tan argue that ChatGPT can support personalized learning, formative feedback, and instructional planning while reducing teachers' administrative workload. Together, these studies suggest that greater efficiency allows teachers to spend more time focusing on students' learning. But researchers don't all agree. Kaneski and Wang caution efficiency should not be confused with educational quality. They argue that AI should strengthen teachers' professional judgment rather than replacing the pedagogical decisions that underpin meaningful learning. So, who is right? In reality, both perspectives offer something important. ChatGPT may save teachers time, but saving time alone does not improve teaching. A well-designed lesson plan is only one part of effective practice, but producing high-quality learning still depends on how teachers respond to students' questions, identify misconceptions, adapt instructions, and encourage critical thinking during classroom interactions. So, if ChatGPT can genuinely improve lesson planning, it also promises something many teachers desperately need, which is more time. But if AI changes the way teachers plan, could it also begin to change the role of teachers? So can ChatGPT reduce teachers' workload without weakening teachers' professionalism? Tan found that generative AI is increasingly being used to support instructional planning and assessment, giving teachers greater capacity to focus on learning rather than administration. At first glance, this seems like a clear advantage. But if ChatGPT can generate tomorrow's lesson in seconds, are teachers still designing, learning, or just simply selecting from AI-generated suggestions? Lewis argues that digital platforms do more than improving efficiency. Through the process of platformization, they increasingly shape how teachers think about planning, teaching, and professional expertise. Brandau argued that teachers need AI literacy, pedagogical expertise. Heinemann also reminds us that successful technology integration depends less on the technology itself than on teachers' professional learning, confidence, and educational support. So if AI can give teachers more time, that's clearly an advantage. But every time teachers interact with ChatGPT, they are also sharing information. So what happens to the data? So every time teacher uses a ChatGPT to design a lesson, they may enter learning objectives, classroom scenarios, or descriptions of students' learning needs to generate more relevant teaching resources. This can make lesson planning faster and more personalized. But it also raises an important question. What happens to the information that teachers shares with AI? Stockman and Nottingham argue that many educational technologies operate within a system of surveillance capitalism, where user interactions and data became commercially valuable rather than remaining purely educational. So from this perspective, ChatGPT is not only generating lesson plans, but it is also collecting information through every interaction. Lewis extends this discussion by arguing the digital platforms are not simply classroom tools. They increasingly shape how teachers plan lessons, access professional knowledge, and make teaching decisions. These studies suggest that the issues extend beyond privacy. It is also about who benefits when AI becomes part of everyday teaching. Richard and Macpherson argue that school reinforces this concern in Australian school by collecting more data about students, while Casey provides practical evidence of ongoing data collections. However, Tan argued that AI relies on user interactions to generate more personalized feedback and improve lesson planning. From this perspective, some level of data collection enables better educational outcomes. So where should the balance lie? The evidence suggests that the question is not whether data should be collected, but for how much, for what purpose, and who controls it. If teachers routinely use ChatGPT to design lessons, are they simply making planning more efficient, or are they also normalizing the collection of children's data as part of everyday education? So protecting students' privacy is essential. If AI platforms is increasingly becoming part of everyday lesson planning, who ultimately shapes the way teachers teach? So, Lewis described this as platformization, where digital platforms increasingly influence teachers' professional learning, knowledge, and classroom practice. Buchanan and Macpherson extend this discussion, warning that educational priorities may gradually reflect the interests of Silicon Valley rather than those of educators themselves. Carey illustrates this influence by examining Apple's teacher accreditation and Apple Distinguished School initiatives, showing how technology companies increasingly shape professional learning and skill recognition. Similarly, Seacrest argues that big tech often presents educational reform as innovation while also advancing commercial interest. So if AI changes how teachers design lessons, it is also reasonable to ask whether it might also change how schools choose to assess. Kanetsky argued that assessment should increasingly encourage students to explain their thinking, reflect on their learning, and interact with the teachers rather than simply reproduce information. Their recommendation recognizes that if AI can generate sophisticated written responses, the final product alone may no longer provide reliable evidence of what students genuinely understand. Park identifies academic integrity, privacy, and data security as essential aspects of AI literacy, while Panagopoulos highlight the broader ethical and legal implications of generative AI in education. So, these challenge schools to reconsider what they value as evidence of learning and how assessment should evolve as AI becomes part of everyday education. So what should school actually assess? Is it knowledge, critical thinking, creativity, decision making, or students being able to explain, justify on their thinking? Of course, redesigning assessment assumes every school has the same opportunity to use AI effectively, but is that really the case? That's the next challenge we need to consider. Can ChatGPT make lesson planning more equitable? So there are many opportunities such as personalized learning, differentiated activities, inclusive learning planning to support diverse learners, but there are also challenges raised by Rowe and Perkins, as well as Garzam. They mentioned that there are unequal internet access, limited devices, teacher AI is not ready, and there are socio-economic differences. So how should WA primary teachers use ChatGPT responsibly? Aravantino say that teachers need AI literacy, ethics, pedagogy, and ongoing professional learning, while Brenda say that teachers should critically evaluate AI, not just simply accept its output. Heinemann mentioned that successful technology integration depends on teacher support, professional development, and also school infrastructure. What does this look like in practice? So before using ChatGPT, the teacher needs to know your school policy, protect students' privacy, and enter identifiable students' information. While using ChatGPT, teachers need to critically review AI lesson plans with Australian curriculum. When teaching students, the teacher needs to discuss AI bias and also need to teach responsibility. So, this brings us back to our original investigation. Should WA primary teachers use ChatGPT to design lesson plans? Yes, but only when teachers remain the decision makers. ChatGPT should support teacher expertise, improve lesson planning, protect students' privacy, enhance learning, but not just replace professional judgment. Perhaps the future of education isn't just about whether ChatGPT can design lesson plans. Instead, it is about whether teachers can continue to shape learning in ways that technology never could. AI should support good teaching, not define it. Thank you for listening.